lamp of memory, I see you back with me again. It never sleeps, it always keeps returning. The magic lamp of memory that lights the past for me again.
So your eyes shine for me in the night with bright illumination. It's my imagination taking pity on my heart. So night and day I have to play Aladdin and let the lamp of memory restore your love to me again.
Electronics is a science that applies these tubes to the service of man, to the speeding of production, to the winning of the war. To understand how electronic tubes work, let's take a good look at one of them, one that's representative of its species. This is a diode, a typical two-element electronic tube. Let's get inside it. In fundamental operation, it resembles an ordinary single-pole switch, a switch that can connect, for instance, this battery and its motor load. One power lead comes to the anode, the other lead goes to the cathode. When this switch is open, the contacts are insulated from each other by a vacuum, or by some inert gas inserted into an evacuated tube under low pressure. To close this switch electronically, all we need do is heat the cathode and give the anode a positive potential. Then here's what happens. As electrons are emitted from the surface of the heated cathode, being negatively charged, they fly at tremendous speed to the anode. In this way, a current-carrying path is formed, which closes our electronic switch and permits our motor to operate. You'll notice, by the way, that the direction of electron flow is contrary to the orthodox concept of current flow from plus to minus. Now, at this point, you may ask, if an electronic tube is basically just a form of switch, why is electronics hailed today as the technique of a new engineering era? To answer that question, let's review 6 of the basic things that we can do with this new kind of switch. In the first place, we can rectify current with it, converting AC to DC. We can do this merely by connecting an electronic tube in series with an AC circuit. As you study this circuit diagram, note that only each positive half wave of AC voltage will now produce a current. When the anode is negative, the electrons are repelled and no current flows. In other words, because only the cathode can emit electrons, we have here what amounts to a one-way street. We can visualize the result of the tube's rectifying action with the aid of these two oscilloscopes. The one on the left shows alternating current coming in. The one on the right shows pulsating direct current going out. The applications of this basic rectifying principle are many and important. Here's one of them, changing AC to DC on the nation's electrified transportation systems. Here's another, rectification for electroplating operations of all kinds, operations possible only with direct current. Still another example, furnishing DC in steel mills for the driving of variable speed motors, such as the one controlling this giant ladle, or the ones driving steel conveyors with such precise control of speeds that danger of buckling and tearing and consequent mill damage is eliminated. Electronic rectification is also helping to build American air power by making available record-breaking quantities of aluminum for plane construction. From Arkansas mud to American air power involves a complicated conversion of material. Before pure aluminum can be extracted from this bauxite ore, direct current must be applied in a vital reduction process. To obtain that direct current from AC transmission lines, the ignitron rectifier is used. This Westinghouse electronic development changes vast quantities of AC to DC with higher efficiency than any similar type of conversion equipment. Today, it's the main source of current supply for the nation's great aluminum industry, an industry that has achieved a miraculous expansion to meet the demands of a world at war. Magnesium from seawater is another achievement of industry under the stress of war. Ignitrons used in the extraction process speed up the delivering of incendiary and demolition bombs to the centers of Axis production. Still another example of electronic rectification at work is the precipitron, a device for cleaning air electrostatically. This diagram explains how the precipitron works. The rectifying property of electronic tubes is used to apply a potential of 13,000 volts DC to tungsten wires and 6,500 volts DC to collector plates. As incoming air passes through the field of these wires, each particle of dirt receives a positive electrostatic charge. When the positively charged particle reaches the collector chamber, it's attracted to and deposited on negative plates. In this way, air is cleaned so thoroughly that dirt particles down to a 1/4 of an inch are removed. This is a vital advantage today, not only in homes and public buildings, but in industrial plants of all kinds. For instance, in plants manufacturing delicate instruments where air cleanliness is necessary for precision work. In workrooms where optical systems are assembled for a host of military purposes. In inspection rooms where minute parts must be closely examined under high magnification. Air cleanliness is vital, too, in film developing rooms like this one. To understand how electronic air cleaning helps here, let's go aloft in a reconnaissance plane. Click. 5,000 feet above the earth, a camera shutter opens and closes. Scores of square miles of enemy territory have been squeezed down into an image on a photographic plate. An image measured in inches instead of miles. On this photograph, a city might be covered by a tip of a finger. A speck of dust could hide a Nazi aerodrome. The rectifying tubes of the precipitron help make sure that dust doesn't sabotage military photography. Now, so far in this film, we've discussed only one of the basic things we can do with the electronic tube. We can use it to rectify. The second basic thing we can do with it is amplify. Here's how. Between the cathode and the anode of the two-element tube, which we diagrammed a while ago, we now place a grid To this grid, we connect an input of some weak voltage which we wish to amplify, perhaps that of a faint radio signal from halfway around the world. Now let's see what happens. Every time a negative potential is impressed on the grid, even though it be very minute, it has a large effect in reducing the number of the negatively charged electrons which would otherwise keep flying from cathode to anode. Conversely, when the grid is positive, an equally large effect is exerted in increasing the flow of electrons from cathode to anode. The important thing to note here is this. A small amount of power applied at the grid is amplified into a large amount of power in the anode or work circuit. This amplifying property of the three-element electronic tube is put to work in innumerable ways. Westinghouse electronic amplification now helps provide radio and radio telephone contact between airplanes and control stations on the ground, between ships and their communication bases, both afloat and ashore, between individual tanks and their tank force commanders, between firing line and headquarters, between sea-drome lights and night-flying pilots who can turn them on by radio signal. In the field of power engineering, electronic amplification permits the measurement and analysis of minute voltages, stepping them up to the point where they can be seen and interpreted on oscilloscopes. When this giant rotor is completed, its precise dielectric balancing will be made possible by amplifying tubes. Testing of these propellers for vibration fatigue will also be facilitated by electronic amplifying tubes. Up to now, we've considered two of the basic things that the electronic tube can do. It can rectify, it can amplify. A third thing it can do is generate. The term generate in this connection is meant in a general rather than a technical sense. A triode is connected for oscillation in the way shown here. The system then becomes capable of changing direct current into alternating current. Note that what we're doing in this case is amplifying in the usual way and then feeding back to the grid part of the amplified voltage. Continued repetition of this feedback results cumulatively in a strong alternating current. This electronic means of generating alternating current is important because it can produce very high frequencies, frequencies up to millions of cycles, far beyond the range of ordinary rotating equipment. A familiar application of this is the radio transmitter. This modern transmitting room of Westinghouse station KDKA is a far cry from the pioneering equipment of its famous predecessor. This scene reproduces an historic occasion, the first time a radio transmitter was used for large-scale public entertainment.
This is station KDKA of the Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company. We are about to begin the reading of the presidential election returns between Warren G. Harding and James M. Cox. Stand by, please.
Here is a new, less familiar application of electronic high-frequency generation. High-frequency heating of 200,000 cycles per second is now used to flow tin as the final step in the electrolytic plating of steel strip. After steel strip comes from its electrolytic tin plating bath, it first passes through a washer, then between hot air drying jets. At this point, the steel strip has a coating of tin that is relatively dull and porous. Next comes a vital step. The strip is raised to the top of the heater unit housing, inside of which is a series of high-frequency coils. As the strip comes down through these coils, induced electric current causes heat, which flows the tin almost instantaneously, greatly improving its structure as a protective covering. Here's the result. Tin plate that is mirror smooth, free from porosity, so perfect a protective covering that 1 pound of tin can now do the work of 3. Note the horizontal bars in this close-up. These are parts of one of the high-frequency coils that affect the tin flow. If you look closely, you can see the difference in texture between the porous tin entering the top of the coil and the shiny flowed tin leaving at its base. And these are the tubes that generate the high-frequency current which makes the entire process possible. Another important result of this new Westinghouse electronic process is time saving. Tin can now be flowed at a rate of more than 1,000 feet a minute. Here's another example of where electronic high-frequency generation is doing a job today. Dielectric bonding of plastic and plywood sections in a matter of minutes instead of days. As a result of this application, plywood-constructed PT boats can be produced more speedily. Dielectric heating also cures intricate plastic forms faster and better. Here, a dielectrically cured plastic piece is being given a stress analysis. Carrier current relaying also applies the electronic principle of high-frequency generation. Here's part of the equipment that does the work. This equipment makes possible an enormous increase in the speed with which transmission lines can be cleared of faults. Its effect is to increase the load-carrying ability of a system up to 50% or more. We've now illustrated three of the basic ways that the electronic tube can be put to work. It rectifies, it amplifies, it generates. And here's a fourth thing it does. It controls.
Do you ever dream of tomorrow like I do? Do you plan and scheme for tomorrow like I do? I dream of when I'll hold you again within my arms. Are you the same? Does love's eager flame still burn with all its yearning? Are you living just for tomorrow like I am? Just placing your trust in tomorrow like I am. I know that you have lots to do, but when the long day is through, do you ever dream of tomorrow? 'Cause I do.
You're watching Sleepcore. Pleasant dreams.
Oh, Mother, have you taken a look at the morning? Morning, Freddie.
Morning, Mr. Squire. Hey, 2 grouse! Right up in the churchyard. Flushed them with my bite. Gee, they were pretty.
Grouse, eh? Season opens tomorrow. Always used to say the air smelled different on the opening day. Maybe the first frost at night, or dead leaves, or someone burning brush off somewhere.
Can I have an apple?
Sure thing. Say, let's see the paper, Freddie. Toss her up here. Listen to this, Mother. Another 25,000 prisoners. Fella said the war would be over this fall. Looks like he's right. Doesn't look like it could last that much longer.
Hey, then maybe Quince will be home for Christmas, huh?
Quince? Well, maybe not that soon. Say, have you heard from that brother of yours lately?
Not for a couple of weeks. Mother's kind of worried.
You tell your mother not to worry about Quincy Martin. He can take care of himself.
Yeah. Well, gotta get going. So long, Mr. Squire.
So long, Freddie. News like this, and a morning like this, hard to keep your mind on the war. Makes you think of things like a new car, plenty of gas in the tank, and tires with road treads on them. Maybe a bag of charcoal under the seat, and a steak in oiled paper. Roof, you old rascal. Make your mouth water, old boy. Well, it won't be long, Roof. Can't last much longer. The war can't. She's almost done. Any way you look at it, it's almost over. Coffee, Roof. Let's go get it.
Good morning, Master.
Good morning, Ed.
With a slide rule? You tunnel gunners live too much alone. You lose touch with time.
Radio man to pilot. Sir, request correct time for the lad in the greenhouse. Over.
Wilco, correct time. Stand by. 21:39. Mark.
Uh-oh.
For the information of the unseen audience in the turret gunner's seat, 21:39 makes 9:39.
On that dollar chronometer you count the years by. The hell it does. 21:39 makes 7:39 in the morning, my time.
Looks like morning, doesn't it?
Well, it looks like morning in Connecticut. 9-something at night out here makes 7-something a.m. in God's country. God's half of it. East half of it. Figure it out for yourself. I have, often. Smell the morning coffee right this minute clear from Cape Ann to Buffalo. Hello, Red Leader. This is Scarlet Base. Report weather. Over.
Scarlet Base, this is Red Leader. Top, 22. Bottom, 6. Cloud cover, 7. Over.
Red Leader, Scarlet Base. Look around under mattress. Over.
Wilco, out.
Yep, makes 7:39 a.m. and October. What's eating you? It's October here too, isn't it? It's the same month they give you 12 times a year, only warmed over and warmer. Connecticut, it's hoarfrost on the grass and grouse in the pine lots. Ever see the Litchfield County hills at 7:30 in October? No, and if you ever expect to see him again, you'd better...
Geez, look at him. 5, 6, 7. Scarlet Base, This is Red Leader. Tally ho, skunks, heavy cruiser, 3 destroyers, 7 transports, course 273. Request permission to attack. Over.
There goes old Blood and Guts Lacey again.
Red Leader, Scarlet Base. Permission granted. Out.
Program development continued so that broadcasters would have a backlog of experience when the manufacturing of television sets and transmitters resumed after the war. Except for a short time in 1941, program production never stopped at WRGB, and for a while, we were the only operating station in the country. Over 700 local telecasts were presented between 1943 and 1944. Staffed by a small crew of technicians and producers, many of them women, WRGB telecast each week throughout the war years with variety and dramatic programs that are possible only on a network level today. Also, in 1941, WRGB, then called W2XB, moved to our new studios on Washington Avenue in Schenectady. At the time, it was the country's largest and most modern television studio, and a far cry from the strictly experimental surroundings located at the GE main plant in Schenectady. As the business world began taking note of television's enormous future potential, WRGB demonstrated the effectiveness of commercial television to many key national advertising personnel, who would usher in commercials a few short years later. On March 4th, 1942, W2XB was renamed WRGB when the station's experimental license, issued in 1928, was replaced by a commercial license from the FCC. The American Television Society presented the station an award in 1943 for the greatest contributions to television program development of the year. The Society wrote, "We wish to pay tribute to the courageous viewpoint of the management for carrying on against all odds at a time when the future of television depends to so great a degree upon you."
You're watching Sleepcore, media for insomnia. You're watching Sleepcore. Sleep tight.
For use as part of a talking picture, the sound to accompany the photographed action must be recorded for reproduction when the picture is shown. The most desirable material for this purpose has been found to be the photographic film. The finished film employed for reproduction in the motion picture theater, therefore, carries not only the picture of the action that is to be seen, as it did in the silent picture days, but also the photographic record of the sound that is to be. The sound and picture are usually photographed on separate films, which are called negatives. These negatives are combined by ordinary photographic printing to produce the positive print which is used in the theater to reproduce the original picture and sound. Since the photographic film is affected only by light, it is necessary for the recording of sound to convert the sound waves to corresponding changes in light. As I speak, the sound waves produced by my voice are transmitted through the air to the microphone, where these sound waves are converted to changes in an electric current. These variations in the electric current are then amplified and used to control the light falling on the photographic film. The light that falls upon the photographic film is in the form of a fine, bright line extending transversely of the direction in which the film moves. The part of the film on which the line of light falls to make the photographic sound record is called the sound track. When the line of light is so placed as normally to extend part way across the sound track, and the sound-controlled variations cause the position of one end of the line to move transversely of the track, a record known as a unilateral variable area soundtrack is produced. When both ends of the line of light are caused to move transversely of the track, a record known as a bilateral variable area soundtrack is produced. When the line of light extends completely across the soundtrack, and the thickness of the line is varied by the sound-controlled current variations, a record known as a variable density soundtrack is produced. All of these sound records contain photographic records of light variations corresponding to the pressure variations in the original sound. If either a variable area or a variable density sound record is run past a narrow line of light from a fixed source, and the light, after passing through the film, is visually observed, the amount of light reaching the observer is constantly varying from instant to instant. If the eye were capable of quantitatively measuring the light, it would see that the amount of light reaching it from either sound record varies in exactly the same way. There are in common use today electrical devices which will quantitatively measure what the eye can only approximate. The photoelectric cell is one such device and is universally used in the reproduction of photographic sound records. The reproducer system to which you are now listening contains such a photoelectric cell. This varying beam of light falling on the photoelectric cell produces variations in the electric current which are directly proportional to the variations in the light beam. As the varying electrical current in the photoelectric cell is small, a vacuum tube amplifier is required to increase it to the point where it will operate a loudspeaker. The loudspeaker converts the varying electrical current into sound waves, which are the counterpart of the sound waves falling on the microphone in the recording studio. To review, In the recording process, the original sound waves are converted to varying electrical current. The varying electrical current is converted to variations in a light beam, and the varying light beam produces a photographic sound record. In the reproducing process, the photographic sound record is used to produce a varying beam of light. The varying beam is converted into varying electrical current, and the varying electrical current is then converted back into sound waves. Since the advent of successful talking pictures in the late 20s, nearly all variable density photographic sound recording has been done by means of a device known as the light valve. The light valve contains two very thin metallic ribbons, tightly stretched and spaced very close together to form a light transmitting slot. These ribbons lie in a strong magnetic field, and the amplified sound current flows through the ribbons. The electric current reacts with the magnetic field, causing the ribbons to move like shutters, displacing them in direct proportion to the amplitude of the current. In order to ensure high-quality sound recording, the vibrating length of these thin ribbons is limited by bridges, over which the ribbons are tightly stretched. The tension of the ribbons is adjusted by tensioning means. The ribbons are so delicate and their separation and movements so slight that the action of the ribbons can be observed only with the aid of a microscope. The separation between the ribbons is actually less than a hair's breadth. A steady light, concentrated by a lens, passes through apertures in the magnetic pole pieces. This light is varied by the slot defined by the ribbons and is concentrated by another lens system to form a very fine line of light on the photographic film. Since the ribbons act as light controlling shutters, any change in the sound current flowing through the ribbons will cause a corresponding change in the size of the light transmitting slot, defined by their closely spaced edges, and therefore in the amount of light falling on the film. The device thus acts like a valve controlled by the sound current for controlling light. In the explanation of the light valve action that follows, attention will be directed particularly to the portions of the ribbons that control the light, and these portions and their movement will be shown schematically. In this schematic representation, it will be understood that the relative dimensions of the ribbons and the arrangement of their physical supports are illustrative rather than actual dimensions and arrangements. As has been explained, the ribbons lie in a magnetic field, and the amplified sound current flows through the ribbons. The electric current reacts with the magnetic field, causing the ribbons to move like shutters, displacing them in direct proportion to the amplitude of the current. A steady light is concentrated on the ribbons, and these ribbons, acting as shutters, cause variations in the light corresponding to the pressure variations in the original sound. This varying light causes variation in the exposure of the film. The exposed film, when developed and printed, is the sound record. The soundtrack used for the reproduction of music will be shown on the screen, and the soundtrack will be changed from a variable area to a variable density track simultaneously on both the picture and sound record. The photoelectric cell and the entire reproducing system is the same in all cases.